A long time ago, in 1988, I actually chaired what was then called the first ever major conference on climate change. And we produced a declaration, the first sentence of which read, I'm paraphrasing, that what is being done is an unintended experiment which could result in consequences akin to a nuclear war. At the time, that was considered hyperbolic. But now we understand its import. And I must say that in the intervening 25 years, I think I've got the mathematics right, there has been virtually no change whatsoever. It's appalling. And every energy must be applied on an urgent basis to turning climate change around for our grandchildren.
The importance that grandparents are an enormously important force, and to take them for granted, thinking that they are, to presume that their interests are just self-serving rather than realize their need to protect, to care for the next generation, their desire to pass on to the next generation a better life, and their desire to teach. And I think that good for you, you're doing this, because I think to mobilize grandparents to become involved, to become informed, and to, once you get a few grandparents moving, anybody better watch out. I want them on my side.
For our grandchildren is a vote of confidence in that future, the belief that we human beings here on this planet can in fact change the nature of the future for our children, for our grandchildren, and for their grandchildren. And if that does not happen, we're in serious trouble indeed. What bothers me very deeply is the fact that we're in a kind of a societal feeling of hopelessness about the whole question, when in fact we have every reason to be able to change things around. One of the things that I've seen over those years has been the enormous creativity of humankind. And this is what we're really talking about. We're really talking about the salvation of the species, the human species. The planet will carry on after we're gone, but we can do very much to change the nature of society over the next number of decades, so that the children, our children and their children, will have a place that is sustainable, an economy that's sustainable, a society that is decent and human, compassionate, kindly, in place of one that can be very, very negative and very dangerous indeed.
Every grandparent cares about their children, and every grandparent should care about the political world their grandchildren will be living in. And every grandparent has an obligation to make that a civil and engaging world. And that is why it is so important for all Canadians to be actively engaged in the political life of the nation.
This amount of greenhouse gases is continuing to grow, and according to scientists, the tipping point that we must try to not reach, should not go over, is a warming of 2 degrees Celsius. And the last report they gave to us said we are already at 0.85, and we are going to 2 degrees Celsius very rapidly. If nothing changes, if we continue the way we are, we'll reach these 2 degrees somewhere in the 21st century, and it's likely that it will go up to 3, if not 4 degrees Celsius before 2100. And at 4 degrees Celsius, 3 degrees Celsius, we don't know what kind of world we'll create.
Carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere are also having a very, very serious effect on the ocean. When it's in the ocean, what happens is that it combines with water in the ocean to form carbonic acid. That's just a chemical reaction that nobody can change. The ocean today is 30% more acidic than it was before we started burning fossil fuels. As the ocean becomes more acidic, creatures that depend on a different chemistry in the ocean, so we're changing the chemical structure of the ocean effectively, but the creatures that are in the ocean evolved during an era when the structure and the chemistry was really stable. And they're not able to create the shells and bones and teeth in the ocean that they were able to create before. So that's the basic issue. And as the ocean becomes more and more acidic, they will be less and less able to use the calcium in the ocean and the carbon in the ocean to create their shells and bones and teeth. Even beyond that, though, it turns out that that creatures in general, whether they have calcium carbonate shells or not, are having trouble maintaining their own internal chemistry. So they're not able to reproduce, they're not able to digest, and we're seeing this more and more and more. So this is the one big issue of the ocean that has scientists really that has them lying awake at night with these big eyes, because this is the thing that is, it's unchangeable. The more carbon dioxide we put into the atmosphere, the more acidic the ocean will become. If we keep on putting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere at the same rate we're doing it now, by the time we get to about the middle of this century, the pH of the global ocean will be 150 times more acidic than it was when we started. To scientists still believe that there is a window in which we can be successful in pulling back from the brink. But I think it should be clear as we set out to talk today that we are on a brink. This is not a benign situation. This is not something that is fixable unless all of us work together.
I mean, this event is organized by a group that cares about their grandchildren. And so we have a moral imperative to act and to influence all of our friends and all of our communities to act. So are we doomed? We're in for difficult times ahead, for many, many challenges. We are going to be hit by all sorts of extreme weather events in a shrinking economy due to the high cost of difficult hydrocarbons.
Before the period of the mid-'80s, we've seen some, what we call statistical noise there, some variability in the number of catastrophe events worldwide. But from the mid-'80s onward, we've seen an absolute explosion in natural catastrophe events. That upward swing, some of that is earthquake, okay, particularly over the last couple of years where the world's been very active in the earthquake area. But for the most part, we're talking about weather-related events, and for the most part, those events are North Atlantic hurricanes, although there's some typhoon and that sort of thing in there, okay, but there's definitely an upward swing. Now, when you have an upward swing like that, and that's the number of events, you're going to have an upward swing like this, and that is the cost of events. And it's the insurance industry and mostly the reinsurance industry that's picking up the cost for all these things. So again, you see some very slight variability up till the mid-'80s period, and then an absolute explosion in these events. And of course, we get to 2005 with Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. All-time record for insured losses that year, $106 billion US. And, people like myself thought we won't see that record broken for a good long time, and yet last year comes along and that record was indeed broken with even more insured losses due to natural catastrophes worldwide. When a natural catastrophe hits the developed world, our industrialized world, it costs few lives comparatively, but usually a lot of money. But when such an event hits the developing world, it costs lives and little money. Though the most expensive natural catastrophe event in history is still the ice storm in 1998 that impacted eastern Ontario and western Quebec, largest cat in Canadian history. The second largest happened last May, as a matter of fact, almost a year ago, and that was the wildfire in Slave Lake, Alberta, which whipped up very quickly on a Sunday afternoon in a very tiny town 2 hours north of Edmonton. 7,000 people live in that town, and 1/3 of the town burnt, and it cost our industry $700 million. So we asked the question, and we've been warning this for a while, what happened if half or all the town burned? What happened if fire got into Fort McMurray or Whistler or some other place? If this little event costs $700 million, what's the next big one going to cost us? I just want to talk very briefly about this one event because it's very close to home. It's here in Toronto. It happened on Friday afternoon, August 19, 2005. Big rainstorm. We call it the Freaky Friday event because it was just absolutely amazing. The rains, dare I say it here, were biblical. 175 millimeters of rain in 3 hours, which is an astronomical amount of rain if you think about it. It came through on Toronto and the GTA in a very narrow band, and therefore only impacted a few people along that band. Had it went the other way, it would have impacted a lot more, but it came through in a narrow band. Some of you may have had a flooded basement because of this event. But at that time, that was the second most pricey event in Ontario history. The claims for that event are just shy of $600 million, only because of rain.
And the difficulty is that when scientists look at the commitments of all the countries, we are well over the 2 degrees Celsius of warming, so much you will have greenhouse gas emissions sent by all the countries together. And when we say that to the countries, there is no one to say, okay, if it's that so, I will have a target twice more demanding than the one I committed, and I challenge you to do the same. None of them have done that. So we are stalled. And negotiation after negotiation, countries argue about the commas in the agreement, but nothing meaningful is negotiated anymore. Everybody is saying, why I would work harder if the hard work I will do will benefit to the others that are doing so little. And at the end of the day, all of us are doing not enough, even though we know it's not rational to not do more. And it's why I think these negotiations where everybody is trying to pressure others to increase their national target is likely to never be enough. What I'm suggesting, I'm not alone, but my suggestion to try to solve this problem, I'm not telling you I'm sure it would work, but I think the likelihood that it will work is higher than the situation of today, which is not difficult, is to reorient the negotiations of the world toward a world carbon price. Countries will still be invited to come with national targets, but everybody would have to pay the price. And the price would go up year after year to reach a level where scientists are telling us it's high enough to help us to not go too much over 2 degrees Celsius, because I'm unfortunately convinced now that it's too late to stop it at 2 degrees Celsius. But at least if we may avoid 3 degrees, it would be very good. Once it's done, I know it's not easy to negotiate, but assume it's done, it will work this way. Each country would be compelled to raise the price. They may raise the price the way they want. I think a tax is the best way, but if countries want to have a carbon markets, it's their choice. But they are compelled to raise the price. They are free to use the revenues of the price the way they want. They may decide to invest in green technologies. They may decide to invest in education. They may decide to invest in tax cuts. They may do what they want. And also, over the years, countries would be compelled to stop to subsidize fossil fuels. Because if you raise the price and after you give the money back to fossil fuels, does that make sense? So you would be an obligation over the years, it cannot be done overnight, but to stop to subsidize fossil fuels. And we would tax the fuel at the level of CO2 emissions the fuel is sending in the atmosphere. That means that coal would be more taxed than petroleum, and petroleum more than gas. What it would give to the world is a tool to have a very meaningful climate policy. Everybody would have an incentive as a producer or a consumer to look at solutions that will decrease the way you pay. So the cost of fossil fuels would be factor in the cost that people will see, and they would be, because of that, motivated to try to find low carbon solutions, low carbon products around the world, and nobody would be able to escape from it. You will tell me, what if a country does not respect the commitment? Well, the international rule of trade would allow the other countries to retaliate the products of the country who's not raising the cost of the fossil fuels, will be able to retaliate at the border. That means, oh, you don't want to put the price on carbon, I will do it for you and will keep the revenue for me. So it would be a very, very strong motivation to raise the price by yourself. Why countries would accept that more than a national target? It's because it's simpler to negotiate than an addition of national agreements where they are disconnected from each other. Because each country would know that their competitors would be compelled to respect the same climate rules. It's time to suggest to the world to change our strategy and to see if it's possible to give us a tool that is not the solution as such, but is a key part of the solution. To stop to think that we will decrease our greenhouse gas emissions enough as long as these emissions are free. To put a price on these emissions and to do it in a way that will be fair for every country, including the most vulnerable ones.
It would be hard-pressed to find in my craft, which is politics, a larger failure in maybe the entire history of humanity than the political failure around the environment. There has been no greater disconnect in human history between science and public policy than there is today, which is ironic, since we are the most educated, technology-savvy, healthiest, more aware generation than any other in human history. We have more data, more technology to understand the granular nuances of changes in our environment, and we may go down as a generation in human history that most disengaged from reality to live in an environmental bubble that it would be hard to define anything as a collective commitment to insanity. It is fascinating to me to watch the difficulty that many of us have in politics, and I'm in a very mainstream political party, the Liberal Party, to actually find space to stand and fight on these things.
Political action is crucially important. We can't change enough light bulbs. We can't hop on a bus and leave the car behind enough times to make a difference. It will require major social change, major change in the economy, and that can only be done with government leadership, which is why we need to get people involved to demand that government leadership, to have a significant climate action strategy with goals, with amounts, with timetables. That's going to involve a carbon tax of some sort. It will need that kind of economic incentive to do the right thing instead of the wrong thing. It's going to require regulations. It's going to require government procurement policies. And it's going to require individuals of goodwill setting an example. But the goodwill without the action won't take us very far.
And I recently discovered I was blacklisted by the Canadian government for speaking out on climate change. It's important that people and activists around the world understand how environmental voices are being silenced right around the world, and in particular right here in Canada. And I would like everyone to write a letter to Prime Minister Harper asking him to go green and to take action on climate change. And you may laugh at that and think, well, there's no way that that is going to make any difference whatsoever. But I would disagree with you. I think that the only thing that will make a difference is public pressure. Because if Prime Minister Harper knew that his power depended on being green, he could turn green overnight.
I think in the end, when we all have a finite time on this earth, but in the end, I think I want to be able to say I did the right thing. And I think most people want to be able to say I did the right thing. And civic engagement is about trying to stand up for what you think is right. And the exciting thing about good civic engagement is connecting with other people who feel the same way and building a movement, building momentum. It was very exciting for me as I became involved with the Greens to be able to be with people, many people who were innovators, who were highly intelligent, who had from many different walks of life, and see that they too saw this, the importance of engaging, the importance of connecting with people, but the importance of fighting it in the political arena.
As Scripture says, without a vision, the people perish. We are invited now to provide a vision. We are particularly called upon to use our resources, energies, vision, and values to make a difference positively, not only for our generation, but for our grandchildren and for their progeny as well. And I just want to conclude with a quote from Thomas Berry, recently deceased Roman Catholic priest and cultural historian. What is happening in our times is not just another historical transition or simply another cultural change. The devastation of the planet that we are bringing about is negating some hundreds of millions, even billions, of years of past development of life on Earth. This is a most momentous period of change, a change unparalleled in the 4.5 billion years of Earth history. All indications suggest that we are, in a sense, a chosen group, a chosen generation. We did not ask to be here at this time. Some of the prophets, when asked to undertake certain missions, said, "Don't choose me, that's too much for me." God says, "You are going anyway." We are not asked whether we wish to live at this particular time. We are here. The inescapable is before us.